Welcome everyone to episode 3 of the Lasallian Way. I want to begin with kind of a review of what we learned last week. You remember the expression was. Okay, you remember that the expression was, let us remember we are in the holy presence of God. And the typical Lasallian way of doing that is one person will say the front end of that and everyone will respond with the back end. So I will say to you, let us remember we are in the holy
presence of God.
Well said. So today is episode 3. I'm Leif Kerwald, pastoral coordinator here at St. Charles. This is our fall enrichment series on the Lasallian Way, the principles, the expressions, the vision of St. John Baptist de La Salle. I want to share a picture with you, and it will show up on the screen here for those of you to see. In the new commons, the new cafeteria for De La Salle here on our campus is a very large image of our saying for today that says, enter to learn, learn to serve.
Leave to serve.
And
leave to serve.
Yeah, sorry. Enter to learn, leave to serve. Thank you. And this is a key expression, a key Lasallian expression. And if our guest arrives, I want to have him explore that with us. But you know, it's not a hard thing to understand. And what I would like to do is just to invite any of you to reflect on that for a moment. Enter to learn, leave to serve. What might that mean to you? Or what experience have you had in your life that phrase might capture for you? For example, since we're connected to a high school, earlier I was thinking about my high school days, particularly my senior year in high school, where I became involved with the local Young Life chapter in the town where I went to high school. And I feel like I entered into a whole new realm of faith growth that I had not experienced growing up as a Catholic boy, always going to mass and such. But I discovered two things in my senior year as a high schooler, and one was that this relationship that I had with my faith could be a personal relationship with Christ. And that was an amazing revelation for me. And the second thing that I learned was I am expected to do something with that relationship. And I'm expected to do something for the sake of others with that relationship. So you could say that I entered my senior year and learned a great deal and left, graduated from high school with a real different vision than I had imagined. And I can tell you that's a core piece of my calling and why I find myself here with you. So that would be a quick story for me to share around enter to learn, leave to serve. How about you or you? Thoughts?
Okay, I was raised as a Baptist, And as a Baptist, we were taught early on that we needed to be in relationship with Jesus Christ and God very early on. So when I came to be converted, I was really hopeful that that would be the same situation. And fortunately, here at St. Charles, it was. So as far as learning to serve, I guess that's just something I've always felt compelled to do.
Thank
Don't
you.
know why.
Yeah, thank you. Our guest has arrived, so we're happy about that.
Sorry about that.
Welcome, Ed. You can remove your mask.
Okay.
Everybody else will keep theirs on, but you and I.
Okay.
My name is Leaf. I'm the pastoral coordinator here at St. Charles.
All right.
Ed, and I think, well, tell me how to say your last name.
Oh, Zupcic.
Zupcic.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you.
Very good.
Welcome. This is our fall enrichment series. We have 10 or so people here present and another 10 or so on Zoom.
Okay.
We're gathering each Monday for a half an hour to explore the Lasallian Way. That's the LaSalle. And our expression today is the same expression that lives in the commons. Enter to learn, leave to serve. And so, Ed, I want to begin by asking you to introduce yourself to us. Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit of background, how you ended up at De La Salle, and what does it mean to be chair of social science department?
That's a great question. Changes every. So yes, so I am. I've been at De La Salle for 20 years. I think Polly Weibel and I are. There's another teacher that's been there 1 year longer, but we came to the school when it was. We just had a 9th grade actually. So we've been there a long time. I actually went to LaSalle High School in Milwaukee, so that was my introduction to the brothers and to Lasallian Education. And then I worked overseas for a number of years. I went to New York University for graduate work, and then I ended up teaching overseas in private American high schools for kids of American diplomats and business people. So I worked in Russia for 7 years, and Brazil. Anyways, then I came back to Portland and I ran into my history teacher from LaSalle and this guy named Matt Powell who was they were sort of envisioning starting a new school here in North Portland. The Catholic community in North Portland there had been a North Catholic high school back in the 70s and that had burned down. And so there was this sort of longing to start a new high school, a Catholic high school here. And so anyway, one thing led to another and I came to the school and it was really exciting to kind of get involved with the school at that point in time because it was just sort of a vision. And then things happened really quickly. We started to, we were the second school in the country to replicate this corporate work study model. There was one school in Chicago that had started that and we were the second to do that. And now we're part of a network of 38 schools. So that was really super exciting to test that model to see if you could actually send hundreds of teenagers to work once a week, and if that could actually be a model that would make sense, in terms of education, but also funding the school, and it worked. So it's been really interesting. Yeah, so that's how. I mean, I kind of,
So you're like a founder.
Well, no, the founder is Jean-Baptiste. But Lasallian Education is something that. I think I struggled with it a lot in high school because LaSalle High School in Milwaukee is a very good, Catholic high school.
My son went there.
Oh, is that right? Okay. When I was there, there were a lot of brothers. There were probably 14 brothers on campus. And 99% of those guys are not brothers anymore. And so there were amazing people to be taught by. They were just really great, very really great. But I think the mission, like the Lasallian mission piece, I really didn't get much of at LaSalle. And I was always kind of curious about it, you know, about what is it about this educational philosophy that is unique or different from the Jesuits. My kids actually are a Jesuit, and so anyway, so we argue about these things all the time. But
You have one Jesuit online here listening today, so.
oh, is that right? Yes. I always feel like a traitor when I say my kids. But yeah, so I think for me personally, I don't know, you know, it's just kind of weird, but how you end up back, how things kind of came full circle.
So when you hear the phrase, enter to learn, leave to serve, what does that mean to you?
Well, you know, I mean, I think we're all drawn to the mission, really, of serving kids who, you know, for whom like this is their ticket, this is their opportunity to kind of really change their trajectory. I mean, to kind of put themselves in a different situation and to create opportunity for themselves. And you know, I mean, I mean, I think we're all kind of humble, you know. I mean, I think if you have a little role in their lives in that process, it's an amazing thing. And after 20 years, I mean, you know, I can truly say that there are kids who would have ended up in a completely different spot in life were it not for LaSalle, for De La Salle, and the way we do.
And perhaps
school.
yourself.
Well, I mean, I don't know. You know, it's funny. We were here on Friday for a ribbon cutting ceremony, and there's a kid who graduated. He was in the first graduating class in 2005, and he and I, he was a great student, and we've had a lot of conversations over the years. But he's gone on to become really successful, and he donated a ton of money to the school. And but the first thing every time I see him, the only thing he wants me to know is that I was the only teacher to give him a B+. And prevented him from becoming the valedictorian of our school for that year. And so he's introducing me to some friends of his, and he's like, "Yeah, this is the teacher that gave me the," you know. So it's kind of a joke, but yeah, I mean, I think we, you know, relationship, rigor, relevance. You know, those are like the three kind of, in addition to the enter, learn, leave to serve. The relationship piece is very important. And
say those three again and then break them open a little bit.
Relationship, in terms of like our connection with the kids is really important. Probably more so than, it's not just a professional relationship. I mean, our kids struggle. Our kids have all kinds of challenges, and you know, they just do so much better when there's a connection. You know, whether it's whatever it might be. So that's important. Rigor is that we take great pride in being a college prep school and making sure that our kids, that if we're on the same page with that, then they're going to do fine. And again, relevance. I mean, the things that I teach as a history teacher, government teacher. You know, I'd like to think that my kids are much more articulate on some really difficult subjects, difficult things to talk about, and complicated things to talk about because of the classes they have with me. So you know, it kind of helps everything to keep things relevant, to keep things kind of
relationship, rigor, relevance.
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense to me.
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, as a teacher, you know, sometimes you're trying to figure out like what is going on in this profession, you know, and how all these things have changed, even in my 30 years of teaching. And especially last year, you know, it forced us to kind of completely reinvent the way we teach. And it was really hard, really awkward and difficult. And but if you keep coming back to those core principles, and it's doable.
Help me out a little bit, Ed. And so what are the courses that are in the social science department?
So we used to have starting with freshman year, they would normally take a civics class, local Portland history class. And then we've kind of phased that out. And then they do sort of an economic foundations class, or like a preparation for CWSP, for the corporate work study program. And then sophomore year is a world history class, junior year is US history, And then senior year is a semester of government and a semester of economics. So that's kind of their, and we don't have any electives, so that's it.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so with that coursework, here's the challenging question. How do you see the Lasallian principles infused in those coursework, those courses?
Well,
How is it, in other words, how is it those courses different at LaSalle than say down at just down the street at the new McDaniel High School? Is that the name? That used to be Madison?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I think here at De La Salle, I mean, I think at La Salle or wherever you take these courses, you're going to get some of this, but I think we emphasize social justice. We emphasize empathy. We emphasize not just focusing on sort of government and political leaders, but really, how people experience, how people of different races, different classes experience government, experience the economy, and that is kind of intentional. I mean, I teach economics in the second semester, and you could teach economics like a math class, and I intentionally don't do that. So we intentionally read about the unemployed, and we read about struggles that I think our kids can resonate with. I mean, and sometimes too much. Sometimes you could be studying something in the classroom, and half your class is their parents are going through that every single day. And in fact, in my history class, they just wrote a paper on Thomas Jefferson and slavery, race, slavery, and Jefferson's views on those two topics, and which is amazing because there's just a coincidence that last Monday in New York, they took this statue of Jefferson down, and the kids, are writing papers that really, I'm asking them to think deeply about racism.
So that's really the relevance issue, not just in our society today, but to the particular students that De La Salle is serving. Yeah,
because they have the lived experience. I mean, they're I hate to, our kids are profile. I mean, they go through all of it. And sometimes they don't know how. It's hard to be articulate because their connection to it is emotional, it's personal, so personal. And I'd like to think that when they take our classes, they are able to speak about these issues and maybe put themselves in a different perspective, or just think. It's funny. We've had this connection with Catlin Gable of all schools over the last 5-6 years, which is an elite private school. And it's interesting. Those kids have very little diversity. We have the diversity, but they have like sort of this intellectual. And when you get these kids together, it's really interesting what happens. Because they have all the book knowledge and all the intellectual kind of foundational stuff, but our kids have the experience. But they don't know how to always talk about their experiences. Or they just, they assume that everybody is like this, and whatever. And so it's a fascinating thing to see. But now we're also getting more leaders at our school.
You mentioned the ribbon cutting on Friday,
yeah,
and I was there. A couple of us were there, and we heard Nick Taylor,
Nick Tucker, yeah.
Describe his full circle experience of doing his work study at Bora Architects while he was student, went away and studied architecture, came back and got a job with Bora and was on the architectural team that designed and renovated the new school. It's a terrific full circle story. But I was struck by one word that he used in his little talk. Was what he said, something to the effect of what a wonderful opportunity it was to create a just space for our school. What do you think he meant by that?
Well, I think he meant that we serve kids who don't live in great spaces and don't have, don't have, I mean, he said it as well, that architecture is political, and who gets what, is driven by economics. And we've not had that, and that's a clear, it was a clear reference to 20 years of not being in your own
Less
home.
than great facilities.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that where we were before we came here was fine. I mean, on some level, it was not bad.
But it wasn't yours.
It wasn't ours, but we didn't go to work thinking it's not ours, so who cares? We went to work trying to make it the best school that we could make it, and in spite of all that was part of it. But we couldn't have certain things that are, But I'm also a little, I'm also like, so I'm a teacher, right? So I want to see I think the gym is important because it will be amazing. But I also think the gym shouldn't just be about the gym.
Right.
I think the kids need a top-notch academic program and all the resources. So I want to see a library, and I want to see other things be part of the school as well down the road. But Nick is, the things that he said was just brilliant, and yeah.
I wonder, those of you online or those of you here, comments, questions for Ed? Ricardo, nice and loud so this mic can hear you.
Talking about the aspect of regular, for example, U.S. history. How do you approach it? What are some of your sources? Because traditionally, U.S. history hasn't been taught very well in the United States.
Well, I have to say personally, I mean, I used to read Howard Zinn with the students, People's History of the United States. So but now there's not one textbook. There's not one historian. I like to go to the sources themselves. So the students read a lot of primary and secondary sources when they're writing papers and when we're having discussions. But I'm sort of personally fascinated with like these founding fathers and the Constitution and the stuff like that. I think the Constitution is just, I mean, I spent a lot of time with students studying that Constitution and trying to understand it and understand many Supreme Court cases that came out of really important battles over different amendments. And so I think the kids, if you ask them, what is Mr., what do we do? They probably all say, well, we spend a lot of time talking about the Constitution, and I think that's really important. But
I can't think of, in our world today and all the tumult that we've been through politically, to be anchored and rooted in the Constitution just makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a good place to be. I mean, it's not, it's not a Bible, and it's obviously it's brilliant because it is short and there are multiple ways of interpreting things in it. But like the other day, we were talking about John F. Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson and their position on civil rights, and it was always, it's kind of interesting to go back and look at, you might have this view of John F. Kennedy, but when you look at civil rights, there's a lot of room, a lot of things didn't happen, that might have happened. And then you look at the tragedy of someone like Johnson, who had, got dealt the Vietnam War, but really had another, wanted to do something else as president, but unfortunately, everything kind of. So
I was just thinking about how politicians today will use the Constitution to promote a message that they want to promote. And for those of us, I probably include myself, not well grounded in the Constitution, we might be overly swayed, whereas your students would be able to hear that message and put it in dialogue with what they're learning.
Yeah.
And draw their own conclusion.
Yeah.
That just seems really good, really rich.
Yeah, we were talking about affirmative action, and we were talking about some really powerful 14th, some really important 14th Amendment cases about equality. And it was interesting how one of the justices who was completely opposed to any kind of affirmative action was Clarence Thomas, who's the African-American justice on the court. And, we're talking about like, well, why would we assume that he would vote just this way just because he's Black? I mean, it's sometimes difficult, but just because someone is Black or white doesn't mean that they're going to represent this idea over that idea, and you have to kind of understand Clarence Thomas and how he thinks, so it's always, I mean, kids love arguing and debating. And
Sure.
man, we have like, whether it's a free speech issue, or whether it's a search and seizure issue, or, especially in these cases that happen in schools. I mean, kids love like, they can see both sides, and they can see, but they have some really strong feelings, and my job is just to channel that back into the work.
So I wonder if anyone online has a question or a comment that they'd like to make.
I do.
Yeah, Kathy, go ahead.
Are you incorporating critical race theory then into your U.S. history?
Yes, but not as a separate sort of unit of study.
Before you go further,
these are all like really intense questions.
A short, if someone said critical race theory, what is that in a sentence or two?
Institutional racism.
Right.
I mean, I don't teach that I grew up very skeptical about any theory that purports to explain human behavior completely, whether it's Marxism or critical race theory or any. Whoa. You guys can hear that?
Yeah.
I just think, human beings and when you get into the weeds, things are just too complicated. But I think, so I have to admit, I mean, we in my classes just assume that racism is baked into our history, it's baked into our institutions, and we just have to figure out where it is and how it operates, and how we want to address the problem. That's kind of what we do. So I have to admit, I mean, the way critical race theory was rolled out when I first became aware of it, it was sort of like, we have this theory and it's going to explain everything, and I was like, no, it's not, probably, I mean, it's a powerful idea. And of course it's one that, like I said, I mean, it's part of everything that I do, but it's not, it's not
No, just
Ricardo, let's, we only have just a couple minutes. So Barbara.
Do you take your students as a group to lobby a governmental, like post office? They're so delayed now on their service, or any other governmental action? Do you ever go out with a group and talk to those governmental groups?
I mean, I usually just logistically, I've had people come into my classroom and register kids to vote, and I've had people from the community come and talk to the kids. We actually hosted a symposium. I can't remember the year, but we had the mayor and we had the police chief, and we had a number of activists from the community at De La Salle, and my students were a part of that. So I have to walk this fine line. I can't, I mean, my personal views and things that I would like to see. I mean, my personal political views, I try not to, I mean, if you actually looked at my curriculum, look at what the kids read, you could see some of that, but I'm not a lobby. I don't, yeah, to take
You
kids
have to
on
maintain some objectivity.
You do,
right? Yeah.
you do, yeah. I mean, we've gotten involved in some marches and protests. In 2017, after the Parkland shooting, we all went marched and about school shootings and those sorts of issues. And the kids we marched, and that was kind of, because that really, it was like those things are just changed our lives too. I mean, from that point on, we were doing active shooter drills every 2 months, and it was super stressful to have to barricade, and you're sitting there with 20 kids barricaded in a room, and it was,
Yeah. Sandy.
Do your students have any good feelings or bad feelings about Portland right now? The homelessness, the crime, the shootings?
yes, they do. It's hard to, I mean, they are in that population. So we have a lot of kids over the years whose parents are incarcerated or who are, in a shelter, or who are victims of, we have a family who's I've taught all of their kids who the dad was a victim of racism by a police department here. So it's these aren't like theoretical issues. They're not curriculum issues. They're things that kids carry with them all the time. And I mean, like I said, so
They're
it's
going into this society.
right.
And eventually, they're going to take over. Hopefully,
Right.
they'll do a better job.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's hard to know because they're young, and they're kind of unpacking a lot of those emotions and feelings, and it's complicated, because like 15 years ago, a lot of our graduates just wanted to go to school in the South, just to be taught by people who look like them, to be in communities where, and I always felt like that's not the message of our school, but you can understand why they would, because they don't feel comfortable in Portland. Although, one of my best friends at De La Salle over the years has been an African-American woman who lives on the west side of town. And and her experience is, again, complicated. I mean, she feels comfortable on this side of town, and her church is here and everything, but she lives on that side of town.
Ed, I have one final question for you, and I'm asking this question to each of our guests each week, and it's kind of it points to that relationship question, and it's simply this: what advice would you have to both De La Salle and St. Charles Church in building a strong, lasting, collaborative relationship as we move in together and occupy the same space together?
What message? I think Oscar, I think Oscar said it very well on Friday. Obviously, we have to be patient, and we have to be reasonable and be willing, be sort of solution orientated, and try to always hear each other out. But whenever I can't imagine what the conflicts will be, or if there will be conflicts, but to try to find a solution that makes sense, for everybody. And I know that De La Salle, from our end, I mean, it's amazing. This is our permanent home, as far as I can tell. I mean, we're not, and for me personally, it's just like it's an amazing moment after all these years to feel this way. So we have a lot invested, and not just in getting here, but in making sure that everybody here is committed to this vision, because it is an amazing vision of what these two institutions might become for the community, you know, and I think that is something that you should all keep at the forefront of our minds, you know, when we're.
Well, and I think that has been at the forefront of our minds, and we look at De La Salle as a wonderful partner in the mission to serve young people, their families, all the people, particularly in this neighborhood and beyond. Ed, thanks so much for
Thank
being
you
with
for
us
inviting
today.
me. Really enjoyed
And,
it.
please.
Sorry I was late.